meeting is a listening forum to get input for the comprehensive plan from community organizations. And on behalf of the CPT, I would really like to thank those who provided the presentations and information for today's session. Because we're holding this meeting electronically due to the public health emergency, I have a few items to note before we begin the presentations. First, citizens may listen to and watch our live meeting using the information provided on the county website. Our materials are also uploaded there. As with other CPT meetings, there is no general public comment period during today's meeting. However, general public comments were collected before noon today through email, US mail, and our phone lines. Katie, did we get any comments for this meeting? Hello? Okay, Katie says we did not. Thank you very much. And I will now ask for a roll call from Brett. Could you call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Beck? Ms. Brule?
Yes, present.
Mr. Carter? Mr. Haldeman?
Here.
Mr. Hitchens? Mr. Croft?
Here.
Ms. Leverins?
Here.
Mr. O'Connor? Mr. Piper? Ms. Wertman?
Here. Okay. Let's see now. Okay. On April 14th, 2020, the board readopted the continuity of government ordinance, which under certain circumstances permits this committee to conduct today's meeting by electronic or telephonic means without a quorum of members physically present. May I have a motion for adoption of that resolution for today's meeting?
So moved. This is Rich.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I think that sounds good. Christy, do you want to go ahead with the presentations now?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for their flexibility. I know I have talked to everyone that has signed up for a CPT forum, whether by information or by a virtual presentation, and everyone has just been so wonderful and flexible and accommodating so that we can gain their important feedback for our comprehensive plan. Today, we have 5 virtual presentations, and we will have one that was already pre-recorded as our 6th presentation. In addition, afterwards, I'll go over just some of the information submissions that were submitted as well. But without further ado, I know we're a couple minutes early, and hopefully she won't mind, but we're going to start with the Williamsburg Health Foundation, Ms. Kyra Cook, and I just want to thank her for her presentation and look forward to what she has to say. So real quick before you do get started, everything is limited to 15 minutes, so Brett will be our timekeeper, so keep your chat kind of visible, but when we get down to a couple minutes prior to that time expiration, he will raise that hand feature, so we'll just let you know. But anyway.
All right. I'll try to figure that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before I start, I'd just like to thank James City County staff for their professionalism and dedication during this difficult time. I think it's like herding cats to pull off something like this, so thank you very much. And I'll just let you know when to advance slides, if that's okay. But good evening. My name is Kyra Cook, and I'm the Director of Strategy for the Williamsburg Health Foundation. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to participate in this event. We would like to share with you our perspective about land use in James City County and its connection to community health. Next slide, please. Before I begin, I'd like to share a bit about the Health Foundation, who we are, and what we do. The foundation was created by the proceeds from the sale of the Williamsburg Community Hospital to Centera Healthcare. Essentially, the Health Foundation provides grants to improve the current and future health of our community. We also convene multiple groups in the community to solve health challenges that cannot be addressed by one agency alone. To fulfill our mission and carry out our vision, we have 3 goals. The first is health promotion. We promote lifelong wellness and informed individual choices for all who live in our community. The second is access to health care. We target resources to make sure the health care needs of our most vulnerable community members are met. And the third goal is advocacy and capacity building. We aim to increase health opportunity by advocating for their consideration in community decisions and by strengthening agencies influencing health in our service area. That final goal is what brings me here today. Next slide, please. Because I mentioned the Foundation's goal to increase health opportunities, I thought I'd explain what health opportunity is. By health opportunity, we mean systems and policies must be in place so that individuals are able to have options available to them to make healthy choices. This may include items like having access to a proper grocery store so you can buy fresh food, not processed food, or having sidewalks along roads so that walking is the safe and easy and healthy choice. Health opportunity is a large, complex topic. To help better explain the health opportunity, the Health Foundation often uses Health in All Policy as a proxy. Health in All Policies is a framework developed by the World Health Organization, and it contains most of what we consider when thinking about health opportunity. Next slide, please. It gives you a sense of what Health in All Policies can potentially include and how it is organized. Although Health in All Policies can encompass several topics critical to community health, I will focus today on that which the Planning Commission has jurisdiction over, including land use and affordable health policies. Next slide, please. In James City County, there is a gap in life expectancy of 12 years, depending on where you live. In Grove, the life expectancy is 74 years old. In Governor's Land, the life expectancy is 86 years. Much of that gap has to do with the quality of the built environment, the affordability of housing, the availability of jobs, and access to grocery stores. Because of that, as you develop the comprehensive plan, the Foundation respectfully requests that you place a high priority on affordable housing and pay careful attention to walkability and sidewalks, especially in low-income neighborhoods. Next slide, please. This chart helps to demonstrate why we're asking this of you. In 2017, the Health Foundation commissioned a study to demonstrate the connection between housing and health. One of the findings of that study, which can be found on the Health Foundation's website, is this chart, which demonstrates James City County's comparative level of effort when it comes to affordable housing. The formula used for this chart demonstrates the volume of subsidized housing compared to the estimated need. James City County has a comparatively low housing support index when looking at other localities in Virginia that James City County often compares itself to. While this doesn't represent all affordable housing options available in James City County, the affordable housing crisis here is supported by several other studies, including James City County's very own Workforce Housing Task Force report. James City County needs to do more when it comes to affordable housing, and the comprehensive plan plays a critical role in that effort. We are pleased to see James City County take the lead on this important topic when they created the Workforce Housing Task Force, and we applaud the recommendations outlined in their final report. It is of note that the Health Foundation's former president and CEO was a member of that Workforce Housing Task Force, and our current CEO will be serving in a similar capacity in the city's similar effort. Next slide, please. The Health Foundation respectfully requests that you incorporate all of the James City County Workforce Housing Task Force recommendations regarding housing production into the comprehensive plan, including mixed-use, moderate-density zoning districts. The county should amend the zoning ordinance to facilitate generation of a wider range of housing types by size and form that increase the supply of workforce housing, including incentivizing development opportunities in transit corridors, allowing by right development for workforce housing. Adaptive reuse. The county should adopt guidelines and incentives to support the repurposing of old, vacant, and/or underutilized commercial buildings as workforce housing, specifically old motels and outdated shopping areas, including developing a zoning designation that would allow motel to apartment conversions through an application process. Accessory apartment policy. The county should modify its accessory apartment ordinance to facilitate the development of more accessory units while retaining the residential character of existing neighborhoods, including revising ordinances related to accessory apartments to increase the maximum size of detached accessory units and to modify setback, parking, and/or other requirements to make it easier to build accessory apartments. Public land. The county should establish a formal policy related to the use of publicly owned land for housing development. Some county-owned land could be appropriate to set aside for the development of workforce housing by the private sector. Additionally, the county should explore options for creating a housing land trust or land bank for public land that is vacant and/or underutilized and located near jobs and transit infrastructure. A land trust or land bank would be a mechanism for acquiring, holding, and ultimately deploying public land specifically for workforce housing. Please also consider amending the county's capital improvement process, which allocates resources for building or redeveloping public facilities to ensure that opportunities for creating housing options on public land and in conjunction with public facility development are considered during the process. And finally, voluntary inclusionary zoning. The county should establish a standalone, voluntary, incentive-based inclusionary zoning program that offers bonus density for workforce housing, with a goal of eventually getting the authority to adopt a mandatory inclusionary zoning program. Next slide, please. Sorry. Just like to thank you for allowing us to present to you today. I'd like to close by saying that in other circumstances, I would have been joined today by my colleagues at the Foundation, in addition to several of our board members. I'm sure several of them are watching, actually. And I'm happy to respond to questions if there's any time available or if there's any interest.
Kara, hi, this is Jack Haldeman. Nice job. Nice job. Thank you. I recall following the recession of 2008 and 2009, several years of unfortunate health trends that developed from that. In fact, some of them I think survive to this day. The increases in suicide rates and alcoholism and domestic abuse and so forth that were kind of related in some way to the economic downturn. First of all, did we notice that in Williamsburg, and is there a chance that could follow any recession that we have as a result of this coronavirus thing?
So that's a difficult question to answer. I will tell you that I don't have any specific knowledge of what happened in 08 and 09. I will tell you that we do look at data from 911 systems, calls into first responders to look at issues, that are coming through, whether it's people in crisis. I'll tell you that in response to what's going on in our community, the local law enforcement and first responders have worked with Colonial Behavioral Health to create a crisis intervention assessment center at Riverside Hospital, and the operation of that has been, as you might imagine, impacted right now. But so I can't tell you specifically with local data whether we've had increases in suicide or other or alcohol abuse. I'll tell you that here we do have issues with those concerns, and we have a system that is in place to address it, although like in the rest of the country, it's fragmented and inadequate because of lack of funding. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, and Jack, just to follow up on what's going on now, we're monitoring that closely, but don't have any data to share with you at this time. But
It's still early, I know.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Thanks again.
Mm-hmm.
Kira, this is Rich Kropp. Thanks. I agree. Echo Jack's comments about very nice presentation. And a couple of the points that resonated with me was to take another look at the accessory apartment policy. You know, couple years ago, the Planning Commission expanded that from having to be attached to the residence to, being on the property. And I think there is still some room to relook at the accessory apartment issue. I also like, again, the adaptive reuse idea for motels or other properties that are no longer being used to maybe be converted to affordable housing. So thanks for bringing those items up.
Thank you. Well, we lifted them from the task force report, which we thought was excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If we have time for one more, Kira, would you like to weigh in on anything having to do with all of the mobile home communities in our area, some of which are quite dilapidated?
Was that Ginny? I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I should have identified myself.
Yeah, no problem. Weigh in. Well, I think that there's opportunity to improve the condition of those neighborhoods while maintaining the affordability. There's an agency in Richmond, and the name is escaping me, but they have the weatherization contract for James City County, so they're already doing some work here. And they have a vision for revitalizing mobile home communities and have started doing some pilot work in the Richmond area. And I'd be happy to share with you their video on that. I don't have it handy with me right now, but I can share it with staff and get it to you. But it's a pretty interesting concept about around revitalizing mobile home communities while maintaining the affordability piece, because that's critically important.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you. I would love it if you did share that reference. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I sure will.
Great. Is there any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, I really thank Ms. Cook for giving that presentation. I think it was very informal. So we're going to take just a couple minute kind of pause as we get the next presentation set up. That'll be from Brandy Wheeler from the Housing Partnership. I know I saw her online just a minute ago, so I know she's here. For just viewing audience, I will say that, again, we appreciate everyone coming and signing up for these presentations. And the purpose of these presentations is to allow groups to present their ideas and how the comprehensive plan directly can relate to their organizations and their input as this important process becomes updated and available to those that are policymakers moving forward with the process. So again, each presentation is supposed to highlight ideas of how the comprehensive plan can be updated, or maybe goals, strategies, and actions that can be implemented within the comprehensive plan to move forward for those decision makers. So, Brandy, I wanted to make sure that you were there and can hear us.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy Wheeler with our Housing Partnerships. Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you. First, I wanted to say thank you to the staff, James City County. I echo Kira. It's like herding cats or fleas, if that matters. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for taking the time to hear the presentations and think about some things. So as mentioned, I am Brandy Wheeler with Housing Partnerships here in the Historic Triangle. We service, you can go to the next slide. We are a nonprofit agency, and we service James City County, York County, and the city of Williamsburg. We've been around since 1985. Kind of our tagline that we tend to go to is we keep families safe, warm, and dry. And that is what we are known to do. We are a agency of last resort, if you will. So we see the worst of the worst. These homes have been in the families for years, and it's a generation passed down, and we come in and help them. Next slide, please. So going back, our mission is to repair or replace substandard housing in the historic Triangle area. And we rely on 95% of volunteer labor. The other 5% is done on working with contractors, whether it be pro bono work or half and half, or sometimes I just have to pay a contractor. But our goal is to achieve safe, warm, and dry housing for everybody. And that's our lovely Tuesday, Thursday crew that you can see on the slide. So next slide, please. The scope of services that we provide at Housing Partnerships is our bread and butter, which is emergency home repair. What makes us different than various other nonprofits, such as like Habitat, we repair owner-occupied dwellings. So they actually have to own their home, and then we come in and identify or help them identify safety concerns, or if they have any, emergency repairs that need to be done. So the next thing that we do is home modifications. So we recently received grant money for temporary wheelchair ramps for our rapid ramp program that we have. And so that allows our volunteers to quickly get out to serve our clients and put up a temporary ramp, wheelchair ramp, that will help the client, if they need to get out for doctor's appointments or chemo, or we've had requests from the fire department asking if we could put up ramps. So things like that. And then we will go back and build a permanent ramp for them. And it does not cost them. All of our services are completely free to our clients. We will get into home replacements, and that home replacements and the indoor plumbing project kind of go hand in hand with each other. The outhouse that you see on the slide is actually from a house that used to be on Ironbound Road, believe it or not. And we are now the Region 6 IPR administrator for the state of Virginia. So for our indoor plumbing projects, we service various counties outside of James City, York, and the city of Williamsburg. But down, you'll see our client standing on the porch of one of our replacement homes. So that's our standard home that we use. It's 650 square feet of, basic house. So we'll either connect them to sewer, or we will put in a alternative septic system or a regular septic system. Just depends on the need. Next slide, please. Okay, so we rely so heavily on our volunteers. They are the backbone of our agency. Without these guys, HPI would have to contract out pretty much all of our services, and we can make $1 last by using the volunteer labor. So I rely heavily on retirees in the community. I rely on getting groups in from William and Mary, CNU, the military, things like that. So we have rehabilitated 2,600 houses, which that is just amazing to me, what our team of volunteers can do. And it can be little things to rebuilding. You can see that was a house that caught fire in James City County that I pulled in William and Mary football team to help finish demoing it. So next slide. So now, as we move forward, like I said, we've been in this area for 35 years, going on 36 years now. And we have seen the need of affordable housing, just like everybody else in James City County and the surrounding area. But mainly here in James City County, we're finding that a lot of folks are traveling in to work, and then they live outside of the county borders because the income, with their income, they just can't meet the housing, the rent or mortgage or anything like that with things. So having said that, I'll let you read you've probably already read it, the housing affordability. And actually I pulled this out of part of the James City County core group that had started on housing. So, but as you will see, it says 42% of those households are burdened. And actually, I went on to the HUD website, and I was looking at the area median income for here and trying to wrap my head around it. And it is 48.89% of the renters are burdened here in the James City County area, just here in the area. The area median income is $75,710. So that's what the HUD folks are saying is the area median income. That's certainly not what our clients coming to us are. We are, looking at workforce housing and the term working poor. So that's kind of, I'll get into a little bit more of that. Next slide. Okay, so as we move forward, Housing Partnerships has embarked on this wonderful journey of a low-income housing tax credit project. And with that, its name is Powhatan Terrace. And it is located 2 miles from the ferry. So for those of you that remember Green Springs Grocery, Deli and Grocery, there was a trailer park back there as well. It's in between TK Antiques and Raleigh Square. There's a piece of land right there that goes back. So that's where I'm talking about. With this LIHTC project, and we're talking about a $9 million project for this. You can see what we will have available, which will be 5 ADA units. It's 36 townhome units, 1 or 2 story. All of the units will be for rent, and they will, it's going to be a mixed use rent of 50% 2 bedroom and 50% 3 bedroom. And we're going to kind of guide from there what we get back from our market analysis more once we start ground up. So you can see the square footage is there. And again, we are targeting 40 to 60% AMI, which is area median income. And just to give you a kind of, so you can kind of wrap your head around this, the clients that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we're talking they make somewhere between 15 to 20,000 for a family of 4. So, once you start putting a dollar figure to all this, it kind of really starts, hitting things out of the park of wow, we really need this. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the benefits and, of course, challenges. You guys can see, we have a great list of the benefits. It's the number one is bringing affordability to the county. We need it. We all know we need it. It's just a matter of we've got to get there to get a shovel in the ground and get it going. So, and by having this Powhatan Terrace project, we are assisting the workforce by having the housing available to them, the land location, and then lastly, it is sustainability for housing partnerships as well. So the challenges, NIMBY, of course, the not in my backyard, and funding of a LIHTC project is certainly, on the list of challenges. That's for sure. It just is. The timelines that we have to meet for everything and make sure that everything is lining up, and make sure that it lines up because tax credits expire. And we want to get on this and get this up and building. So next slide. Okay, so how can JCC support HPI's mission? Of course, it's all about allocating more funding for affordable housing, kind of piggybacking on what Kira was saying. Another thing, at least for us, when, in the trenches, is streamline the permit process and inspections for affordable housing repairs and working collaboratively with HPI to better serve the residents to age in place. Right now, it's a little difficult for myself and for the volunteers, how we have to go through processes to get things done as far as like permitting and inspections. And it just backs our timeline. It backs our timeline up. It backs our client list up. And we follow the building code of Virginia, and it's in ADA compliance as well. So we just need to see if we can find a happy medium with all that to just make it work a little bit easier. So next slide. And that's about all I had. To echo what Kira was saying about the agency that was doing the weatherization, Jenny, on the trailers. Kira, I believe it's Bay Aging, but I may be wrong on that, but I think it's Bay Aging that got it. So.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Are there any questions?
We have about 2 minutes remaining, so if we have any questions or comments.
Hey, this is Jack Haldeman. When will the Powhatan Terrace project get started? Do you have the tax credits in place?
We do. They are in place. We have secured them. We are working with a partner agency at this time. And we hope, fingers crossed, that we will move forward late fall, maybe late. Well, I say that hesitate with a hesitation. If we can get the funding, then we will be able to start late fall into the winter. But in reality, I would think it's going to be more like the spring of 2021. But at least we hope to have some shovels in the dirt by then, by the winter. So fingers crossed for funding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Is there any other comments or questions?
I'll try one more if I may. Jack Haldeman again. Well, I was on the Workforce Housing Task Force, as was Ginny Workman, and one of the things we wrestled with, and you touched on it, a lot of people live here and work elsewhere, and a lot of people live elsewhere and work here. Mm-hmm. If we build more workforce housing or affordable housing, how do we know that the people who will live there will actually work here or just live here and then go someplace else to work?
Well, I think the main thing, as we're seeing is in the data, is that, there is not affordable housing here for, if you look at like the schools and look in our fire service and stuff, we just don't have it. We don't have it. Okay. I'm pretty sure that these units will be rented out as soon as they're built.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. Thank you, Brandy, so much for coming and making that presentation. We really certainly appreciate it. Now, as we kind of change gears and let Alex kind of load up the next presentation, will be from Grove Christian Outreach, Katie Patrick. Katie, are you there?
I am here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, just give it 1 second until Alex can switch those screens, and then we'll begin the next, or begin your presentation. We really appreciate it. There it goes. All right, without further ado, Ms. Patrick, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here. And as the others have said, I can't echo enough. You all have done a fantastic job of getting this put together in a format that makes it easy for us to still come together during a very important time. So we appreciate it. Allow me to introduce myself very briefly. If anybody is familiar with Grove Christian Outreach Center, you probably are also familiar with Pat and Thomas McCormick. Pat is the previous executive director and a founder of the center. In October of 2019, I accepted the offer and came on as the new executive director upon Pat's retirement. So just a quick introduction if we haven't met yet. So next slide, please. Grove Christian Outreach Center has been a nonprofit organization in the Grove community for 20 years now, with a mission to maintain an outreach center in order to minister to the physical and spiritual needs of the poor and disadvantaged of the community. For those that are not familiar, but I think that many of you are, Grove Christian Outreach Center places a focus on providing to the families that live here in the Grove community, serving their food, clothing, and other basic necessity needs. Next slide, please. Our neighbors here are the Grove residents. Many have already been talked about. Excuse me, Williamsburg Health Foundation spoke very specifically about the Grove community and the life expectancy because of the living conditions of the folks in Grove. And we are located right below Busch Gardens and above the Lee Hall area of Newport News. Next slide, please. The folks that live in the Grove community, 37% of them are children living below the poverty level. 30% of the households in Grove are lacking health insurance coverage. These are from surveys of 2016. We hope to get more updated numbers with the next census. 61% of students attending James River Elementary School receive free or reduced rate lunch. That was the latest statistic I had. And in a meeting, recent meeting with somebody from the school board, that I've discovered that number is actually slightly higher. 41% of the housing stock in the Grove community is mobile homes or campers, which many of us know means that that is low income housing. 30% of the residents are renting their homes, and 56% of the population is white. 33% of the population is Black. 11% is another race, and 16% of the population are of Hispanic ethnicity. Next slide, please. We are serving clients who are disabled, living on fixed incomes, Social Security, disability checks, single parents. Many of the folks that live here are working in the tourism industry that makes up a lot of employment in Williamsburg and James City County. And as many know, it's not a surprise. There are a high percentage of undocumented immigrants that make their home in the Grove community because it is a safe community for them. Next slide, please. The outreach activities that we have to serve the families living in the Grove community include a very robust food pantry program, a clothing closet that allows families to prepare themselves for school, job interviews, and everyday living. We provide financial assistance to families in the way of assisting with utility bills and rent, as well as covering prescription costs for those that are facing financial struggles. We also provide gas vouchers and bus tickets under normal operating conditions, school uniforms for children. As you all may know, James River Elementary School is a uniform school. We make sure that children in the Grove community start the school year out with 2 new uniforms. We have a very robust summer lunch program to make sure that when school is out, kids are still fed during the summer. We also have a bike ministry that provides alternate transportation for adults looking for ways to get to work, medical appointments, and other outings. Next slide, please. In 2019, Grove had what I consider to be a phenomenal year. distributing over 500,000 pounds of food to families facing food insecurity here in what is considered to be a food desert. Over 1,300 different individuals were served. Over 2,200 snack bags were distributed to children in the community. Over 1,600 lunches were given out to children in the Grove community during summer 2019. Thank you to a wonderful grant, we were able to provide 200 families with robust Thanksgiving baskets during the Thanksgiving holiday, and 414 different families sought services from the center for different outreach activities. Next slide, please. Some of the challenges that we face here at Grove include a tremendous lack of sufficient space to conduct programs. While it is a fairly new facility, it was built with a budget so that there would be no debt when the construction was complete. So they built within their means, which was a very smart move, but now we are already finding a lack of space for programs ongoing. We would like additional space to offer educational opportunities in the way of classrooms as we partner with other community providers. And one of the challenges is that our special use permit dictates that Grove Christian Outreach Center shall operate as an accessory use to a house of worship. You all can reference the case number as indicated on the slide if you so wish at a later date. Next slide. So as I was preparing this, before we entered into what has become the COVID-19 pandemic in our community, state, nation, and world, we were preparing to ask the participation team to consider a zoning ordinance to allow for outreach center zoning not dependent on other use such as religious gatherings. So I just want to bring this to the attention of the participation team, and we will at a later time be meeting with other folks to talk to them about specifically pursuing this specific ordinance. And so at this time, if anybody has any questions, I would be glad to answer them.
What's the population of Grove? How many people live there? How many families?
There are, I actually do have those statistics. Bear with me just a moment.
You can just get them to staff if you want, if it's awkward to find right now.
Well, there's over 1,400 homes in the Grove community.
Thank you.
And interesting to note, there is James City County, I know that participated in a survey of the mobile home community several years ago. And I actually referred to that study that you all completed while working on a grant proposal to Dominion Energy. And I only mention this because it was brought up by both the Health Foundation and the, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cold. It's just a cold. And housing partnerships in regard to mobile home parks. I've been seeking funding from Dominion Energy to possibly get some funding to help the owners of mobile homes in the Grove community work on individual weatherization projects.
Ms. Patrick, this is Rich Kropp. If we have time for another question, could you give us a little more detail on your final point talking about a zoning change for outreach centers? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, thank you. It is my understanding that James City County does not currently allow for standalone outreach centers, and that the zoning for Grove Christian Outreach Center is dependent upon the connection with a religious entity. We are connected with Grove Christian Church, Grove Community Church. Mm-hmm. And if at any time in the future the church ceases to exist, it would be imperative that the outreach center was still able to conduct business without relying on a house of worship to share space.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Jenny. I just have a couple of quick questions. On your outreach impact slide, I'm trying to make sure I understand this correctly. Are the 1,371 individuals, do they make up the 414 families?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And is it true that Grove extends across Route 60 to, it's both sides of Route 60, right?
When you say both, can you please clarify what you mean by both sides of Route 60? I'm not sure I understand your question.
Okay. I think as I'm heading toward Newport News, a lot of people, I tend to think of Grove being the area on my left as I'm heading east.
Oh, okay. I think I understand your question now. So
it also goes on to the right side of Route 60, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you say that I was actually quite surprised that 41% of the housing stock is mobile homes.
Yes.
And you say 30% of the residents are renting. Well, I guess that makes sense because all of the mobile homes most of the mobile homes are probably rental units, aren't they?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So that leaves a very small percentage of the single family homes as owner occupied.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay. I did not realize that was the way the demographics were in that community. So that's very, very interesting. And, the problem with mobile home parks is that because it's all personal property, you cannot build any equity. And I'm really hoping, I know it's just a big, big job to tackle, but as having been on the housing task force, I'm really hoping that we can do something to address the ability for folks who live in mobile home parks to have all of the residential rights they deserve and to be able to accumulate some assets eventually. So thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also important to note that I do get a lot of the information that we share comes from a wonderful survey completed by James City County Parks and Rec.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, was there any other further comments or questions for Ms. Patrick? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Patrick, very much for your presentation. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. As we move forward, we'll just take a couple minutes so Alex can bring up our next presentation, and wanted to test Mr. Ray's mic, if he is there.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Oh, perfect. Very good.
Is that good? Okay.
Yep, just give it a couple minutes and we will have everything up and ready.
Okay.
Is all the committee members good? All CPT members good?
Yep.
I know we're ahead of schedule and things are running very smoothly and so forth. So it looks like Alex has the presentation up, so I will turn it over to Mr. Jack Ray. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next slide, please. Hello, my name is Jack Ray. I'm president of Toano Historical Society, and I grew up in Toano in the 1950s and 60s. My family's been in this area since the 1790s. Thank you, CPT members, for allowing me to participate in the 2045 listening forum. I'm here today to promote my hometown of Toano, Virginia. This slide is an outline of what I'll be talking about over the next few minutes. Next. The village of Toano was formerly known as Burnt Ordinary after Fox's Tavern was burned to the ground during the American Revolution. Lafayette marched through here in 1781 on his way to Yorktown. We do have a little colonial history, but the most interesting part of our history was when the C&O Railroad laid tracks through the center of town in 1881, and the village was renamed Toano, a Paiute Indian word meaning high ground. The rail line brought rapid growth. From the 1880s until the 1920s, Toano became an economic powerhouse. With the advent of truck farming, Toano became the largest shipping point between Richmond and Newport News. It was once bigger than pre-Rockefeller Williamsburg. By the 1950s and 60s, Williamsburg had opened a new hospital and more modern grocery and clothing stores. Traffic increased through town as more locals started going to Williamsburg for their basic needs. A decision was made to widen Richmond Road in 1966 from 2 to 4 lanes through Toano. Many of our historic buildings were demolished. Sadly, we lost much of our historic character and became another small town in decline. Next. This was our main street looking east towards Williamsburg. There weren't any automobiles in Toano at that time, but we were known during this era as a village of stores. Next. This is the same view over 100 years later. Amazingly, these buildings are still standing. The Masonic Lodge, the old bank building, and the Martin and Fahrenholtz store. My grandfather ran this store for 50 years and lived just across the street. Next. This was his house on the cover of this book. My Uncle Tom Martin, my mother, and 3 other siblings were born in the house. Later in life, Tom wrote his memoirs about growing up in Toano. Next. The book included a map he drew from memory of our main street as it existed in the 1930s. This was our once walkable village that both he and I knew like the back of our hands. Next. When I was 15 years old in 1966, I personally witnessed the demolition of 14 historic buildings when Route 60 was expanded from 2 to 4 lanes. And I can tell you there was a lot of gloom in town when this happened. Next. The photo on the left shows the day these men met in Toano next to Barksdale's drugstore, watching the demolition equipment arrive. I was there. The top right photo is a view of Route 60 looking east as the demolition was nearly completed. Our walking village on this side of the road was completely wiped away. The bottom right photo is the same view 53 years later. These undesirable buildings cropped up in the late 60s and 70s. Next. Taylor's Garage, built in 1914, was a popular hangout of the locals. This picture shows the bulldozers pushing it up in a pile, and we all watched it burn for about a week. Next. Toano High School was built in 1908. Over 500 students graduated there before it was torn down to make way for the new fire station. This was perhaps our saddest loss. Next. We also lost 2 beautiful landmark hotels, the Green Shingle and Wayside Inns. They were the bookends that marked the village center. To this day, Toano has never recovered from this road project. Next. Now, this is a chronological list of the revitalization activities over the last few years. I'll briefly talk about these throughout the rest of the presentation. Next. My brother Jeff and I purchased our grandparents' home in 2003. The house was built in 1920 and is a Toano landmark. Next. I got very excited when I discovered this document, the 2006 Toano Design Guidelines and Streetscape Plan. Its basic principles were to highlight and honor history, encourage growth that enhances small town character, slow traffic, and make a pedestrian-friendly town center to create a sense of place. I began to visualize a Toano reminiscent of its heyday years in the early 20th century. In 2012, James City County began designing the new firehouse to be built on the same site as Toano High School and used architectural features of the school to showcase the new station. I believe we should continue this theme on our main street where new infill buildings could evoke the architecture of old Toano, just as the '06 design guidelines suggest. This document is more applicable today than ever before. Next. Also, in 2012, our company was able to acquire a portion of the Main Street properties where many of our historic buildings were demolished in 1966. In recent years, this site had become an awful eyesore of blight, right smack dab in the middle of our once beautiful village. Using old photographs of 19th and 20th century buildings previously located on this site, we teamed up with architect John Hoppy to create a new concept called Toano Station, the same name it had 140 years ago when Toano's first depot was built there in 1881. After rezoning this B1 property to mixed use, we want to recreate the depot on the back of the property. A likeness of Barksdale's drugstore and the old potato house will anchor the corners. The middle block will consist of apartments or offices over retail. Next. While the Toano Station project was percolating, we decided to restore our home place, which is visible from Route 60. We wanted to set an example of quality restoration in the historic center of town. Between 2015 and 17, we were able to purchase, or maybe a better word, rescue 5 other historic homes that span from the new firehouse to Toano Middle School. These are the founders' homes and are in a state of disrepair. Once restored, they will become an awesome connection to the new downtown area. These homes can be viewed in the appendix of this presentation. Next. We needed an organization to advocate for Toano. The Friends of Fords Road in Toano, Fort, have done a terrific job tending to the needs of the village, but they are not an official nonprofit organization. So in 2018, we chartered Toano Historical Society, a 501c3. Next. During this same time period, we submitted an application to the Department of Historic Resources to form the Toano Commercial Historic District. This consists of 9 Main Street buildings dating from the late 1880s to the 1930s. In 2018 and 19, the historic district was designated a state and national landmark. This will provide tax credits for historically appropriate renovations of those buildings and could increase investor interest in redeveloping the center of the Toano community. Next. We realized there was a need for a big picture, a more comprehensive plan for the historic village extending from the new fire station to the middle school. We hired Allison Platt of Rivers and Associates out of Greenville, North Carolina, a renowned urban designer. Using John Hopkey's renderings of Toano Station and the '06 streetscape guidelines as a starting point, she laid out the right-sized infill buildings interspersed amongst our historic homes and existing buildings that line our main street and are shaded in blue. If successful, this plan could bring approximately 100,000 square feet of retail, 34,000 square feet of office space, and more than 100 townhome units. Retail offerings would complement the unique and historic character of Toano to include restaurants, diners, artisan shops, a small grocery store, bakery, coffee, dress shop, brew pub, all sorts of small businesses. There would be bed and breakfast opportunities for our historic homes and room for 20 or more small cottage-style bungalows. The master plan even includes putting back likenesses of our original bookends of the village, the green shingle and wayside inns. This plan is inviting, authentic, and a historical connection to our past. Next. Ms. Platt recommended a market assessment to validate her plan and use as a necessary tool to attract investors and new businesses to Toano. Subsequently, we hired Greg Payne with Economic Leadership LLC in the summer of 2019. Although Toano is an unproven market, the resulting analysis was favorable with promising demographics and development trends. Quoting from the study, 1 or 2 demonstrated successes would lay the groundwork for more. Next. Also in 2019, we made a decision to remove the blighted buildings on the south side of our main street. Removal of these buildings was a huge visible step forward in showing the potential for Toano's revitalization. A brand new canvas was created. Next. And on that canvas will be the home of Toano Station. These new buildings will match the scale and architecture of the historic one across the street. To view moving images, you can go to the appendix and click on toanostation.com. All right, that photo there, this was our first annual Christmas tree lighting on the Toano Station grounds soon after the demolition last year. Amazingly, over 1,000 people attended, and you could feel the excitement about the future of Toano. Next. I'm not seeing next. No, okay. I've already mentioned that 1 or 2 demonstrated successes will lay the groundwork for more. We have plans underway to put a restaurant and bar in our grand. You need to go back one there. I was talking about the restaurant. You can go back one. Yeah. This is our grandfather store. We have plans to put a restaurant in. Quoting from the market assessment, the #1 need is an upscale or mid-level restaurant and bar. There's a desperate need for a good sit-down place with few options nearby. One good popular restaurant would change the atmosphere and perception of Toano. We believe the community will rally around the restoration of this beloved building. It could be a real kickstart for Toano's revitalization. We will use historic tax credits to complete the renovation. Next. The second proposed business is to put a bakery in the historic Travers home. This building was most recently the Toano Gun Shop. It was built by C.P. Slater in 1900. The Travers family purchased it in 1943. We met the family and they are very excited about their old home place being saved and repurposed. We have plans underway to refurbish this building to be occupied by Virginia Bread Company. It will become a bakery, coffee, and sandwich shop. Next. I want to personally thank the James City County Board of Supervisors for approving a resolution that led to the Toano community becoming an affiliate member of the Virginia Main Street Association. This will bring us another layer of success. Just like any other historic district, we want Toano to be beautiful. We want a walkable Main Street village with crosswalks, sidewalks, street lights, buried overhead utilities, a planted median, and traffic slowed to 25 miles per hour through town. Why do we want this? To enhance the lives of Upper James City County residents, to create investment opportunities and jobs, to increase tax revenue for James City County. How can you help us? You can validate and renew the 06 design guidelines for the Toano Community Character Area, support the 2019 master plan by Allison Platt, support expanding our historic district to include additional properties so owners can take advantage of tax credits, and support new businesses such as the proposed restaurant and bakery. And finally, you can help create a limited public-private partnership to facilitate the revitalization of Toano. All of these suggested strategies are already included in the 06 guidelines. We ask that you please go back and revisit this document. Next. And concluding here, Toano deserves its rightful place in the history of James City County. We have tremendous potential to become a new historic destination and a complementary asset to the historic triangle. Next. Thank you.
And this concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ray. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Ray?
This is Rich Kropp. I just wanted to, I know Jack, and I've watched with interest everything he's done, and he's made such a huge difference in the viewscape of Toano, and I wish him luck with his future plans. When my wife and I first drove through here and decided to settle and make this our home, we said Toano was such an interesting historic village with so much potential if only somebody with a vision would come forward. And so thanks, Jack, for everything you've done. Thank you.
Well, this is Julia Leverins, and I want to echo what Rich just said. I've been here 40 some years, and I've always driven through there wondering about the history. And now I really credit the community for coming forward and teaching us, and I'm sure teaching the rest of the historic triangle about this gem that we have right here in James City County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If we still have another minute or two, hi, this is Jenny Wortman. Can you tell me what happened to the 2006 design guidelines? Did they just get neglected? And what is involved in creating a limited public-private partnership? That may be too big a question for the time remaining, but if you could just give me a couple of hints, that would be useful. Thank you.
Well, I believe the guidelines have been placed on the back burner. And if you would read them again, there are 7 strategies that go with that kind of outline how the county could help us. And I would take too long to describe the partnership, but it's just basically supporting what we want to do in Toano.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. If you have any additional information that you want to send to the CPT, certainly you can forward it to me, and I'll be happy to get that to them. But we certainly appreciate your presentation today.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. We'll give Alex a minute or two to switch gears. Our next presentation will be from Patrice Sadler. She's with the Historic Virginia Land Conservancy. Patrice, are you here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, great.
Wonderful.
I'll
So we'll let you know when Alex gets that presentation up, and we can get started.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, so our CPT members, we're still good to go?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, wonderful. All right, Ms. Sadler, you have the floor, and we appreciate you giving a presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me tonight. And, you know, Alex, you can just go ahead and put the other slide up, which I'm just going to be speaking tonight, and you can be looking at a hodgepodge of wonderful properties that we have protected. So I am Patrice Sadler, as it just showed, Executive Director of the Historic Virginia Land Conservancy, and our office is located in James City County. And I'm speaking tonight to reinforce the importance of landowner conservation program, and I want to voice my full support for its funding during each budget process, actually, but of course for its inclusion in the comprehensive plan update. So the Historic Virginia Land Conservancy is certainly grateful for the funding that is received from the county and others that allow our organization to carry out our mission of protecting and preserving significant natural, scenic, agricultural, and historic land in the Lower James, York, and Rappahannock River watersheds. This year, the Conservancy celebrates 30 years of commitment to that mission, resulting in the protection of over 1,500 acres of environmentally sensitive land in James City County alone. The county and the Conservancy are proven partners in land protection and have been for many years. At the end of 2013, we celebrated the end of a joint marathon effort, which also included the James City County Economic Development Authority, where the Conservancy is now the proud holder of the conservation easement on Mainland Farm, as you are well aware, protecting 214 acres of the oldest continuously cultivated farm in America. So today, citizens bike, walk, enjoy the viewscapes, observe the changing seasons of agriculture, and simply listen to bird songs, all while protecting water quality for all of us. A James City County supported program that seeks to protect conservation values and resources in the county remains a mutual goal and is fully supported by this organization, of course, as well as the community. Going back, way back to a comp plan, community participation team reported that as far as growth, almost 80% of those citizens felt it was better to preserve farmland than to develop it. Within the county comp plan survey, when responding to being asked the question, over the next 20 years, what are the most important land uses and activities that should occur in rural lands in James City County? Citizens made comments such as establish a green zone, reserve for farming and agriculture, and maintain rural character, which the last presentation touched on, the importance of maintaining character in our communities. And that's very positive. Another comment, save the environment. Conservation easements are necessary. And of course, conservation of wetlands and conserve open spaces were all comments in support of land protection. Over the years, the county has transformed from a predominantly rural character into a more urban environment. So the county continues to experience pressure, of course, from multiple sources to preserve and develop the undeveloped areas that provide the unique character of our community. If we want to maintain that desired character into the future, then it will take sensible planning and vision. The county and the Conservancy could continue their record of successful collaborations that will ensure future growth does not negatively impact the character and ambiance of our community. One example of a past successful collaboration is the tree canopy between Governor's Land and Barrett's Ferry Road. We refer to it as the Route 5 buffer. Set to be clear-cut, the Conservancy and the county worked with residents of Governor's Land to raise funds to purchase the buffer, which creates a beautiful tree-lined highway. These efforts deliver perpetual results and provide a great public benefit. Tonight, the Historic Virginia Land Conservancy supports specifically reviving the Purchase of Development Rights program in James City County, a program that not only targets the protection of certain areas of our natural resources, but also stewards that vital protection to ensure the public benefit indeed lasts forever or in perpetuity. Practically speaking, protecting land helps communities protect their bottom line. There are 5 key ways that land protection is vital, not only visually, but fiscally. The first, it reduces the tax burden on residents. Second, improves property values. 3, attracts the business investment needed. 4, reduces spending on infrastructure. And 5, as we have learned so much lately, promotes healthy lifestyles and public health, which has been made crystal clear to each of us in these past weeks. Without our green spaces, our citizens would be suffering even more so mentally and physically if there were too little or no ability of space to run, walk, bike, hike, all while being able to practice social distancing. It is apparent that citizens need the freedom of open space to help keep us healthy and therefore safe. As far as reducing the tax burden on residents, converting open space to residential development almost always costs more to fund the required services needed than the community can expect to realize in taxes. As far as property values and attracting business investment, studies show there are strong links between community character and economic development. Community image is critical to economic vitality as well as a desirable quality of life. In fact, a recent study of the socioeconomic impacts of conserved land, the lower Chickahominy River watershed, study I'm happy to share with you in its entirety, provided that the net fiscal impact for James City County for every $1 spent annually to protect public services to support land with conservation easements, an estimated revenue of $1.53 is returned to the county. Protecting land is a vital public service that remains a critical factor in the health of a community. A PDR program or similar endeavor would allow the cost of conserving lands for agriculture and open space values to be shared by the landowners, the community, and the public at large. the benefits of such a program being realized by citizens now and by future generations to come. The Historic Virginia Land Conservancy respectfully asks that the county fully support the citizens' expressed desire and need for the revival of a program that addresses vital protection of critically important land and natural resources. Thank you for letting me make my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you, Ms. Adler. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none.
None. Okay,
Right.
wonderful. Well, then everybody
Actually,
must think that sounds marvelous.
Can I get one late one in? It's not really a question, but this is Jack Haldeman, Patrice.
Yes, hi, Jack.
Nice job, thank you.
Thank you.
I learned a new word 2 weeks ago, zoonic, and it's the transfer of disease from one animal species to another. And of course, there's some suspicion that this new virus began in just such a fashion.
Right.
There's a study released 2 weeks ago by one of the two authors is the Dean of Public Health at Cal Berkeley, and another one from another university that strongly recommends land conservation as a buffer between wildlife and human population expansion, encroachment, as a way to reduce the chance of this zoonic transfer.
Well, that's very.
That's not a question. That's just an endorsement of what you were saying, I guess. But
Well, I appreciate that. Wildlife corridors, are a big part of it, as you're well aware, and so that's just another wonderful health support for health and safety reason that we all enjoy these open spaces, but they are vital.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Thank you, Jack.
Great. Is there any other comments or questions? All right. We certainly appreciate you, Ms. Adler, for coming on and giving that presentation and being flexible and so forth as we wanted to get these presentations done for the comprehensive plan. But thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all for our virtual presentations. And at this point, I figured we're ahead of schedule, give a couple minute or at least a 5-minute kind of intermission, if that's okay with the committee, just to kind of get something to drink, use any restroom facilities. And then we do have a pre-recorded presentation from the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. And I know that's about 15 minutes as well. So is that okay for about 5 minutes?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, all right. Let me look at the time. So it's 5:26 now, so 5:31 we'll come back, make sure everyone's here, and then we'll get back started. Started back.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. going to turn it over to Alex, who will play the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District's presentation on horse stocking rate problem in James City County.
I appreciate the attention of members of the listening forum and others watching either remotely or via replay. I am Bob Lund, one of 2 directors elected from James City County to represent us at the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. Working with me on this has been Douglas Hall, our other elected director, James Wallace, our district manager, and Robin Goad, our urban conservationist. I'm here to identify issues caused by the high stocking rate allowed for horses under James City County Code. I will provide brief background about the district and its programs in James City County, proceed to the stocking problem, describe some ways to mitigate the environmental impact of horse operations, then recommend improvement to current James City County codes, and close with contact information for follow-up questions and point to supporting and additional information. Districts encourage voluntary conservation efforts. While continuing its focus on agricultural conservation, the Colonial District has increased its focus on urban and suburban homeowners and other non-agricultural property owners with Turf, Garden Love, and the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, among others. The Colonial District covers 825 square miles, is home to about 175,000 people, and currently employs 7 staff members. Discussions about environmental impact of horses at density allowed under James City County Code with James City County's prior Stormwater Director and Stormwater Programs Advisory Committee led to commission of a census of horses in 3 James City County specified watersheds. The Colonial District conducted census in the 3 identified James City watersheds, checking nearly 2,350 individual tax parcels and found 102 parcels with horse or horse infrastructure. Based on those results, the census team believes there are 350 horses in the surveyed area and between 700 to 750 horses countywide. Issues were found at most horse sites. Horse operations can be an environmental concern as each horse generates approximately 50 pounds of manure daily. Also, horses can damage pasture by overgrazing and trampling when in limited space, leading to soil erosion. A proposed second phase, already discussed with James City County staff, includes a census of the horse population in the rest of the county and a pilot program for voluntary changes to reduce the environmental impact of horses by best management practices that I'll describe later. I realize that this is a very busy chart. But it merely reflects the number of factors and interaction complexity in managing horse operations to minimize horse environmental impact on James City County waters and cost to horse operators, while also promoting horse health and well-being. The problem is our codes allow too many horses on too little land. Expert guidance for quality pasture, not required under James City County Code, calls for 7 or more times the pasture as the open space, not necessarily pasture, required by James City County Code. As this chart illustrates, James City County is in a tiny minority of jurisdictions explicitly allowing so many horses per acre. After no horses, the most utilized stocking rate by 3 to 1 was a single horse per acre. This data is from a Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation evaluation of 111 local ordinances regarding horse stocking rates from jurisdictions across the Commonwealth. 1,000 pounds of horse walking on tiny hooves puts considerable pressure and tearing stress on pasture. Even worse, horses selectively graze, that is, eat what they prefer down to bare ground. Without room and management to allow grass recovery time between grazing and trampling, the combination is a recipe for soil erosion and sediment contamination of impacted streams. 7 horses, each producing 50 pounds of manure daily, amounts to 350 pounds of manure deposited every day. Far too much for natural processes of an acre of pasture to effectively break down, especially one torn up by 7 horses. And of course, attractive flies and other pests add still more bacteria to the piles of horse dung. Runoff from eroded, manure-laden acres can contaminate impacted stream and sensitive areas with unutilized nutrients. Now, about best management practices, often referred to as BMPs, commonly used to mitigate the environmental impact of horses. I'll compress a full day class into about 6 minutes. The amount, quality, and management of pasture is a crucial factor in the environmental impact of horses, cost of maintaining them, and their health. Horses evolved grazing grassland in a setting where the horse would roam to fresh areas from ones less attractive due to dung piles or consumption of preferred vegetation. When we confine horses, especially in limited space, we need to substitute by management what they can't accomplish by roaming, specifically BMPs to protect wet, frozen, or dormant pasture by holding and feeding horses elsewhere. Remove dung, or with sufficient space, spread it by dragging. Limited pasture needs division with fences, rotation of horses between areas of pasture, recovery time by confining and feeding horses elsewhere, weed control by clipping and mowing. Another very busy chart, reflecting the investment of expense, effort, and time to create good pasture. Careful consideration and balancing of factors and complexity of their interactions is required when establishing pasture paddocks, such as paddock design, high traffic areas or lanes, incorporation of shade and fresh water supply, soil chemistry, weed control, seasonality of installation steps, and establishment time, which explains the importance of measures to protect and maintain established pasture described on the prior slide. The lack of buildings and pavement isn't enough for land to be useful pasture, much less high-quality pasture. Some unsuitable areas are obvious with a bit of thought, considering pressure generated by 1,000 pounds of horse walking on tiny hooves. Others are less obvious. The pictured tree damage is called girdling. During periods of drought, or when pastures are overgrazed, horses might begin to investigate undesirable plants. Other horses will simply nibble on anything, including bark, leaves, and seeds. But some trees and shrubs are poisonous to horses. Japanese yew can kill a full-grown horse with just a mouthful. All maples are toxic, especially the red maple, whose wilted leaves become very sweet and toxic. Horses will crave these even with good grass available. Wild cherry, leaves, seeds, and bark, all toxic. Black locust, just 8 ounces of the leaves of bark can kill a 1,000-pound horse. Also, oak, boxwood, horse chestnuts and buckeyes, holly, golden chain, choke cherry, Kentucky coffee, Russian olive, and persimmon are all toxic to horses. Every year, a single half-ton horse will produce up to 13 tons of waste, including over 9 tons of manure. Very few, if any, James City County horse operations have sufficient land for vegetation and natural processes to deal with generated horse waste, either left or deposited or collected from barns, etc., and applied to land, without contaminating streams or other sensitive areas via surface runoff or leachate. Storage to protect surface and groundwater resources from manure leachate is needed, both for on-site composting, also for waste accumulated between pickups with off-site removal. Composting is appropriate, but doing it on-site requires skill, care, effort, appropriate facilities, and equipment. Also, it is unlikely at allowed stocking rates that on-site vegetation can utilize all the resulting compost without contamination from the excess nutrients. Thus, removal to an off-site composting facility will be appropriate in many cases. Dung piles reduce pasture areas horses willingly graze, causing increased grazing stress on unsoiled spaces. Unless carefully managed for grass recovery, the likely result is soil erosion in addition to cited health concerns and nutrient contamination. The benefits of heavy use areas for pasture protection and manure management when we confine horses in limited space is clear. Less obvious are considerations involved in site selection, design, and selecting materials for constructing a heavy use area. Care is also needed in the 7-step construction process. Some horse sites will benefit from ancillary heavy use areas for erosion control around water supplies and in alleyways where horse traffic is too heavy for turf survival. For described environment and water protection reasons, James City County Code should require more, that is at least an acre of acceptable pasture per horse for permitted horse uses in any area. Plans suitable for the requested site horse population, utilizing previously identified best management practices, should ideally be part of the site approval process. Potential impacts on James City County environment and waters of non-compliance to plans support requiring periodic inspection. James City Code allows horse operation in these residential areas without explicitly limiting stocking by the rate specified in A1. In all cases, the theoretical stocking rate is either unconstrained or could be greater than under A1. This should be corrected by explicitly limiting the stocking rate to be no greater than under A1. A1, general agriculture, requires 1 acre of open land per 8 dairy cattle, 13 slaughter or feeder cattle, 33 swine, or 130 sheep. Stocking rates considerably exceeding industry guidance. It would be reasonable to also correct these when making changes for horses. Here again, operators could submit for approval a set of mitigations to offset the environmental impact of additional horses or other livestock. This concludes our presentation. In addition to this presentation, the district package also includes some more slides in the file with presentation slides containing additional information and pointers to sources of information in this presentation and other relevant information, some of which is in other files in our package. Thank you for your attention. We welcome questions, preferably via email to myself, copying others listed, or by phone call to our urban conservationist, Robin Goad, at 645-4895.
All right, that concludes Mr. Robert Lund's presentation that he videoed or he pre-recorded, and I certainly appreciate him doing that. That actually concludes all of the presentations we had scheduled this evening. I would like to say that any of the presentation documents that were shown tonight, as well as other handouts that we have received, are actually on our in our listening forum page on the Engage website. If you just click under Meeting and Events, under Listening Forums, you'll see all the submitted presentations. I also like to bring to your attention the information submissions that have been submitted, and that actually are all on the website. One from the Friends of Forge Road in Toano, Ms. Linda Rice provided information, as well as League of Women's Voters, and Ms. Rice. We've also received submittals from the Tidewater Trails Alliance and the Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation. So I encourage you to go to the website and to read their presentation and information that they submitted. So at this time, unless you have additional questions for me, I'll turn it back over to our chair for any other items for discussion.
Hey, Christy, this is Rich. Just a quick question to understand. So the materials I know are on the link in the Engage website, but these actual presentations with the individuals speaking, that will not be picked up by video archive or on demand or anything like that. Is that correct?
We will make sure that it gets a link put onto our Engage website as well. It is being videoed and recorded, so we'll make sure that that link is available for everyone.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. In addition, we'll make sure that these presentations and so forth get to the appropriate staff who are, drafting the technical reports and so forth.
And Christy, what other presentations? You mentioned two presentations that I hadn't noticed before that are not on the agenda. Who are they?
Actually, I did send an email just prior to today's meeting, but they're from the Tidewater Trails Alliance, I'm sorry, and the Virginia Capitol Trail Foundation.
Okay.
Those information letters and so forth are actually on the website, but I also emailed them to you directly as well.
Okay. I was busy making myself gorgeous for this afternoon, so I just didn't have a chance to see it. Anyway, okay.
One other brief thing, if you don't mind, I just wanted to give a big thanks to Alex and Brett and to Chris Williams and others for making this possible. I know it was disappointing not to be able to do this in person, but overall, I think it kind of went off very well, and just wanted to give a big shout out to those behind the scenes that made it possible.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'll second that.
Okay. Do any of the CPT members have other items they would like to discuss before we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
All righty.
Thanks, everybody.
Right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All.
Thank you.
And thank you, Christy, for all of the coordination on this.
Oh, thank you.